The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, O Lord.
When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him, and he stayed close to the sea. One of the synagogue officials named Jairus came forward. Seeing him, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him, saying, "My daughter is at the point of death. Please come lay your hands on her, that she may get well and live." He went off with him, and a large crowd followed him and pressed upon him. There was a woman afflicted with hemorrhages for 12 years. She had suffered greatly at the hands of many doctors and had spent all that she had. Yet she was not helped, but only grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. She said, "If I but touch his clothes, I shall be cured." Immediately, her flow of blood dried up. She felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. Jesus, aware at once that power had gone out from him, turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who has touched my clothes?" But his disciples said to Jesus, "You see how the crowd is pressing upon you, and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. The woman, realizing that had happened to her, approached in fear and trembling. She fell down before Jesus and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be cured of your affliction." While he was still speaking, people from the synagogue official's house arrived and said, "Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any longer?" Disregarding the message that was reported, Jesus said to the synagogue official, "Do not be afraid. Just have faith." He did not allow anyone to accompany him inside except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they arrived at the house of the synagogue official, he caught sight of a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. So he went in and said to them, "Why this commotion and weeping? The child is not dead but asleep." And they ridiculed him. Then he pulled them all out. He took along the child's father and mother and those who were with him and entered the room where the child was. He took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha koum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." The girl, a child of 12, arose immediately and walked around. At that, they were utterly astounded. He gave strict orders that no one should know this and said that she should be given something to eat. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
There are two options for the gospel proclamation. The shorter one contains only one story of the dying daughter of the synagogue official. And the longer form, which I have proclaimed to you, included another story of healing for the 12 years long afflicted woman. If you have watched the proclamation closely, as an interesting and attracting movie, which notion or elements of the stories have attracted you? For me, after a couple times reading through this gospel, I was very touched and moved with this element. After the afflicted woman touched the cloak of Jesus, she felt that she was cured. The blood stopped bleeding, and she felt the power that cured her. But also, the Gospel of Mark portrays very detail of this. Jesus, aware at once that power had gone out from him, Jesus, aware at once the power in him had gone out, and that power became healing remedy. I was struck at this moment because the reality of pandemic somehow and somewhat formed many charitable activities that people often felt we have a lot of things to give out, to hand on. But I wondered how many times when you and I have gone through the streets, through the shelters, through the poor family, sharing something that you really actually feel that something had gone out of you. Not just a pocket. Something has gone out of you. That is a powerful sharing. That is the total giving. It is important because in one of many text messages I exchanged with my friends and relatives and many people this morning, a friend of mine who lives in Australia, who just noticed the situation in this city, and then he and I chatted, and we said, well, in any circumstances, God has His own plan. We came to a conclusion with an agreement. God has His own plan in any circumstances. And then he stated, in Christian faith, we have a special way to explain that. And we term it in a very powerful phrase that any Christian would recognize immediately. When you gone through some incident or difficult situation and it's over, you thank God because there has been divine providence for you. It has been something that overwhelmed us, that you and I could not have seen before it happened. As I'm looking back, last year and this year, around the world, even in the Rome, in the Korea, Holy See central offices, there have been many creative plans and activities to share the financial resources, medical resources, food resources, nutrition resources, many things those people have, share with those who don't. That has been very good. But that's just last year. We continue the second year of pandemic. And in this city, it has been the fourth wave of community affliction. So the question is, how long can we keep doing this? How much left in our capacity so that we can continue to share and to give? We don't know. If the community affection continues from this city, then to another city, and then to another province, and then to our whole country, we will be ran out of our energy. We will be run out of our patience. So, if we consider the materialism, what you have, what you can count, what you can own, what you can treasure, what you can own, one day you will have nothing. But if you live as Jesus had lived, you never ran out of anything. The power is not what you have, but the power is who you are. Jesus did not and could not satisfy any needs, but he could perform the miracle because he gave people who he was, not what he had. The story in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5, verses 21 to 43, proves for us that the synagogue official who has the power, but he could not control the life of his daughter. He has the connection. He can ask people to come and do what he wants. But the sickness of her daughter became out of control. And you see, a person with office power prostrated, lower him down on the floor, on the crowd, because before Jesus, the one who had many opponents, and asked Jesus, I trust you, only you can make it happen. Because Jesus is what happened. The next story of the afflicted woman is the best testimony for us. Jesus was in the middle of the big crowd. And as the disciple responded, you are in the big crowd and you ask us who just touched you, who can tell? But Jesus knew. Jesus knew because he always paid attention. How many times you and I did not pay attention to God? How many times you and I, when we come to church, we listen to the readings and we remember nothing? If you let the words of God be swollen into your body, just like you inject the vaccine into your muscle, it goes on over your body. It becomes immunization. I want to share with you the story, the real story. So as I want to conclude and convince you that the power of love is indeed the power of life, not the material, the love itself is the life of all. It's not far away, it's about less than 2 kilometers this way. You're going to on Điện Biên Phủ Street. Recently, there's a story that struck a lot of readers on the social network and on the news. There is a gentleman, poor. He doesn't have his own house. He has to rent with a very minimum pay, a very little house, because he needs a place to shelter his afflicted son, whose mother, his wife, passed away years ago. This gentleman is 58 years old, and he makes the earning by riding the motorbike, standing on the alley across the street. If somebody wants to take a ride to go somewhere, he rides people and he gets paid. He doesn't have a smartphone to become the high-tech motorbike, but he lives on the need of people. He explained, if people need me, I work for them. But I often have to go back home to take care of my son. His son can't do anything. The only one thing that the son can do is an adult son. The only one thing that the son can do is to turn on the TV and change the channel. So when the father is away working, riding the motorbike around the city, the son was locked at home because he cannot control, he cannot move around, he cannot protect himself. He can only turn the TV and see the face of people. That's the sign of living for him. But when the poor father gets home, the son who had mental disease would recognize that my love is home. And of course, the little room has no furniture. The father sits down on the floor, and the son moves his body and puts his head on the lap of the father. It's wonderful. It's wonderful, powerful moment that love can transmit without a word. That's the real story. It's not in the book of the gospel that happened 2,000 years ago. It's a real story. So I share with you, I could not forget that story. I couldn't do anything for him, but I could not forget that story. It's a model of love for me and for you. Sometimes, and most of the times, even when you have nothing to give, you have your being to share. If a human person can do that in his very limited capacity, God is more powerful for us throughout our life. So that story, I want to share you as a proof of the gospel. Some of you, and sometimes us, priests, we lose our attention to the gospel because we don't see Jesus walking on the street. We just see him on the page of the scriptures. But here, many stories in our real life. God's presence in our real life, if you could feel it. To make you remember the power of life, the power of love, I would like to share with you one more story, another real story, happened in 2004. I share many times with my community here, but maybe those who listen from afar did not have a chance to know it. When I moved to Chicago on my very first year being a student at Loyola Chicago, there was a Jesuit priest who was the minister of the community, the one who took care of all the operation of the community, from the kitchen to the purchasing to the electricity, everything. Few months after the school year began, he fell ill and he got diagnosis of the last stage of cancer. He was about 73 years old. So he was very depressed. The doctors sent him back to the community for hospice, very last days of his life. And when he faced with that, John, his name, talked with his friend about his struggle. He said, entire of my life at Jesuit, he entered the Jesuit after high school because he very admired of the Jesuit education that he received. And he said, well, entire my life as Jesuit, I talk about love. I preach about love. And I ask people to love. But that struggles me because I don't know what love is. I have been preaching about things I do not know or experience. Therefore, experience God is very important so that you can become like God for others. But his friend explained to him, sometimes you look at the cross, but sometimes you need to look at people who are around you. Lower your eyes, look at people around you. That is love. People who come check on you on your bed, sick bed. People who come to nurse you, to provide medicine, to care for you. That's the love. Love is caring. So I would like to ask you to remember the statement of the first reading. God is the God of life because He created life. On the destructive lives, whatever you want to do or whatever the power of devil want to attack you, that is not God. God presence when there is life. And living throughout this pandemic, life is not self-living. Life is self-giving. The second reading reminds us, if in the society some people have more than others, that is to share. The more you share, the more you will have. Today I revealed to you that in the past 20 days, my office, the Catholic Bishop Conference office, have organized every day over 200 lunch boxes for those who lost their work in the isolation or lockdown areas around this city. And yesterday, one lockdown area got released, and they don't need 130 boxes of lunch anymore. We supply many places. And few of our volunteers, they took each one of them with the motorbike with 10 or 15 boxes. They go out on the street and see whoever living on the street, they share. And one volunteer told me, the moment that I have nothing to give out, I was so thrilled and happy because I felt so tired. And I felt that I did give myself more than just the lunch boxes. That's the reality. That's the possibility that you and I can continue each day because God has been a model for us.